Was the darkest day of your life?
I had just gotten out of the military. I was working in Texas in the oil field. And for all intents and purposes, from the outside looking in, my life was perfect. I was living in a big townhouse. I was driving a Ferrari. I was making a lot of money. But I think that was the most broken I have ever felt in my life. I had a little mini fridge next to my bed, and I had a bunch of monsters in there. And I had a pistol on top of the mini fridge, and every day I would choose which one I was going to eat. Am I going to drink the monster, or am I going to eat the bullet? And every day I chose the monster. Some days it was close.
Adam, Niall, welcome to the Roller Coaster Podcast.
Thank you for having me. Finally, it's about time.
I really appreciate you being here. You're somebody who is a unique anomaly of a man for a lot of reasons. One of them is the fact that there's not a lot of men who I develop relationships with a level of depth in an amount of time that you and I have. And so we only met for the first time maybe 2 months ago. Mm-hmm. And I consider you now one of my closest friends, which is very rare. Like maybe has never happened in my life. And so I think that's a unique perspective for the audience today, knowing that we haven't known each other a long time, but you're one of those men that I feel like I've known forever. Mm-hmm. There's a lot that we're going to talk about. You're also an anomaly because I think your story is very unique. I think it's different than, look, we all have unique stories, but we're going to unpack some stuff today that I think people will just go, how? How is that even possible? I want to kick things off just with a straight arrow question, which is, what was the darkest day of your life?
The darkest day of my life. Probably, I don't think I can pinpoint it to a particular day, but I can pinpoint it to a set of days, a short period of time, I think, is a better, example of that. So I had just gotten out of the military. I was working in Texas in the oil field, and for all intents and purposes, from the outside looking in, my life was perfect. I was living in a big townhouse. I was driving a Ferrari. I was making a lot of money. I was, in good shape, supposedly. But I think that was the most broken I have ever felt in my life for numerous reasons. One being my hormone levels were completely destroyed from the military. And I didn't know that, so I was chemically depressed. And when you have chemical depression, that's the like actual depression. A lot of times when people feel depressed, they're just sad. Their cat died or something like that. They broke up, they had a breakup or something. It's an emotion. When you're chemically depressed, it's not an emotion. It is an actual like physical manifestation of all the darkest and dirtiest and most horrible things in your life, and you can't get rid of it. And it was in that time, I made a joke about it to an endocrinologist later, and she didn't think it was very funny, but I was a Marine, so we have dark humor. I would wake up every day in that short period of time, which was about a year, I would say. I had a little mini fridge next to my bed, and I had a bunch of monsters in there, and I had a pistol on top of the mini fridge, and every day I would choose which one I was going to eat. Am I going to drink the monster, or am I going to eat the bullet? And every day I chose the monster. Some days it was close. And I think something that I've really been wanting to share about this time, because a lot of people ask about the about that, and it's something that I want to extrapolate on, because I think a lot of the times, a lot of the people that I've talked to that have had those types of experiences where they get that close to suicide, or they get that close to taking their own life. For a man, for me, the most difficult part about it was that I couldn't do it. The thing that messed me up for years after that was the fact that I couldn't do it. Like I couldn't pull the trigger. I couldn't finish it.
Like you weren't man enough to do it.
Yeah, I wasn't man enough to pull, like, wow, you can't even fucking kill yourself the right way, you know? And I've talked to quite a few people who've been through that same experience, especially men, and I asked them that. I'm like, did it mess you up that you couldn't do it? And they're like, fuck yeah. Like, God, nobody's ever asked me that before. I'm like, yeah, that's what messed me up the most. And it, for years and years and years afterwards, even after I got out of the chemical depression, my hormones got fixed, I was in a way better place, I was doing the things that I like to do, it's still, there was a little thing in the back of my head that you couldn't finish it. And that's been a common theme of my life for a long time, was not being able to finish things. And it's something that I just recently, within the last few years, a few months, especially with the retreat that we were just on, have been able to peel that onion back a little bit and see what that's all about actually finishing things that I start. And that was a piece of it. And it's really hard to talk about to most people. It's really hard for them to extrapolate that out and enunciate, or not enunciate, but it's really hard for them to articulate that. It's hard to articulate that it was tough to not be able to do it.
Yeah. Man. For those who are listening and not watching, Adam is a man's man. I don't know how else to say it. It sounds cliche, but I'll just describe him. I mean, 6 foot something, 270 something of lots of muscle and Python boots and the whole deal, right? So this guy's ex-military, the whole shot, right? And so, there's this misconception that mans don't struggle from this stuff. The data and the facts just would say otherwise, right? I think we may be one of the classes that's struggling the worst right now from depression and suicide. There's a lot of misconceptions, I think, out there, Adam, about chemical depression, as you described it, right? We're not doctors here. We're not psychiatrists. But for those who are so manly that they don't believe depression is real, what do you say?
Yeah, I think there's some truth to that. So there is some truth to, depression as it's common, as it's commonly put, feeling sad, feeling of sadness, or feeling like, even feeling that you're not good enough, and feeling that, but it's, that it's not real when it's fleeting and it comes and goes. So if one day you're feeling really good and one day you're feeling really bad, that's not chemical depression. That is, you're just sad. You don't have purpose. You're missing something. Yeah. You're not being honest with yourself. That's a big one. That's a huge one. If you're not honest with yourself about who you are, and, stacking the proof in the right direction of what you are and who you want to be, then you're going to feel that way. So in that sense, I think that a lot of those guys are right. The Tates and the guys that said depression's not real. Yep. It's not real for them, because they choose to not let those days where they're down define the rest of their life, which is great. I love that. There is a difference between when you have something chemically wrong with you, when you have a chemical depression, and when you have low testosterone. Mine was insanely low. I think it was 182 nanograms per deciliter, which is, I'm pretty sure my mother has more testosterone than that. Yeah. When you have something like that and you don't know it, and this was, 8 years ago, 9 years ago, and this was before there was a testosterone clinic on every corner. This was before, doctors were talking about, this was before social media was talking about it. It was still a taboo subject. So it was difficult to even get a doctor to test that level for me. I went through 7 different doctors to figure that out. And then the last doctor I went to that finally did the test told me I was normal. So I actually had to take those to an endocrinologist, and my endocrinologist actually asked me how I made it to the office that day because my levels were that bad.
For people who, I'm assuming the ratio of like chemical depression versus depression by choice, maybe we could call it, is wildly imbalanced. Do you think it's like 99% of cases are non-chemical and 1%, or is it 90-10, or any thoughts around?
Yeah, I would say it's more prevalent now, especially with crappy food, toxic water, endocrine disruptors and everything. You know, I think it's a lot more prevalent now. I think we're seeing the effects of a lot of that stuff, of poor nutrition and nutrient deficiencies. And I think we're seeing a lot of that stuff now. Especially some of the studies, I'm a nerd for studies. Some of the studies now about puberty that are coming out, men, we used to spike, our testosterone would spike during puberty, over 2,000 nanograms per deciliter. That's where it would spike when we're 16, 17. That's why, if you're a guy 16 or 17, you're like, I'm sure you remember what being 16 was like, so we'd spike to over 2,000, and then you would normalize somewhere around 600 to 1,250, and then that's where you would be until you're 45. Like that's what it's supposed to that's what's supposed to happen. And then when you're 45, essentially you're supposed to have a drop off of about 1% per year until you die. So if that was the case, then a guy who's 80 years old would still have a 600-700 test level. What we're seeing now is that during puberty, these guys aren't even spiking to 1,000. The spike, the pubescent hormonal spike that they're getting is only 600, and they normalize around 300, 400. So, it's a super taboo subject still about testosterone, and it's going to make you angry, and it's mood stabilizing. The hormone that makes men angry is estrogen, oddly enough. So there's a balance of stuff. You can't just jack your testosterone level up either. It's a balance of stuff.
Sure. So this can't be all, chemical depression, is this all hormone driven? And, for those who are struggling with it now, right, there's all these, again, I want to be I don't want to make light of this situation, because I know a lot of people and even family members of mine really suffer from this. And I know it's a really scary and sad thing. But it feels like the natural inclination is, well, I'm chemically depressed, I'm going to get on medication. And doctors are prescribing all sorts of things that, to me, I just go, man, is that really the way back? Is that the answer? Or is that an eternal Band-Aid that you're going to be, putting on this thing to try to dampen it, right? So how does somebody get back from having, being diagnosed with chemical depression?
I think the first thing you need to do is be a little bit proactive with your own health first. Yes, some of these medications can help, but essentially look at them like a crutch, right? It's a crutch in order for you to be able to walk again. That's with any medication that is a short-term medication, psychoactives, hormonal stuff for the most part, depressive medication, SSRIs, they're supposed to be used as a crutch. So while you are now, taking it upon yourself to develop yourself, you have this medication to help you along the way and be a crutch for you until you don't need it anymore. That's not how they're being prescribed now, unfortunately.
Yep.
They're being prescribed as, oh, cool, you have depression, I can diagnose and prescribe. That's doctors in America, that's the MO. It's diagnose and prescribe, diagnose and prescribe.
Yeah.
So they're incentivized to do that by, big pharma or whoever. We don't need to get into that. But
sure. So Adam, one of the things I want to talk to you about is, I think at this period of time you were in the military, right? Okay. Instead of spending a bunch of time talking about military stories and embellished stuff, right, which I think there's probably a lot of that out there, What are some of the misconceptions that normal civilians may not understand about the way that the military works?
Yeah, I think one of the main ones is what day-to-day life is like. And it overall, day-to-day life in the military is pretty boring. It's pretty hurry up and wait. Wait for this, wait for the commander to do this, wait for your staff institute to wait. There's also some stuff that's not really talked about. Being on the ship is disgusting. That's one thing that whenever I tell this story, nobody believes me. But if you were there, and this was being on a aircraft carrier. It was LHD, I believe, was the USS Nassau. And the berthing, which is where we lived, there's 200 to 500 Marines in the berthing, all stacked in coffin racks, like 5 or 6 tall, and you just get in there, and if you're a little bit bigger, you got to have a top one so there's more room, because your chest will be touching the rack above you. So you're packed in like sardines. But on that ship and other ones that I've heard from other people tell, the bathrooms would regularly just overflow and back up out of the so they would overflow, and the bulkhead of the ship is like this when you go from the bathroom into the berthing, and it would be overflowing over that. So it's just essentially the sewage coming into where you live. And it was just a normal thing. It happened twice a week, and it's just something that we live with. And, it was just a normal thing. Nobody thought it was weird. Nobody thought it was, and they're like, oh, you can't live like that. Like, I hear people say that. I'm like, well, you're in the military. Like, yeah, but they can't do that to you. Like, yeah, they can. Did you read the fine print? Like, you don't exist anymore as a person. Like, they can do whatever they want with you, including test medications, including, like, there was some medications that were tested on us that I found out later were not ever FDA approved. They were not for what they were telling us they were giving us. Yeah.
So you're like a lab.
Yeah.
On these ships.
Yep. Oh, this is just that was not just on the ship. There are a couple of these things. I think it was Malarone. It was a malaria medication. They found later, I would have to look up the statistic, but it was like a large percentage of the men and women who took that drug, their brains fell apart, like later on in life. And I personally took that for 7 months straight. Like, so it's cool.
That explains a lot.
It does, right? And then, on that ship particularly, they had us taking doxycycline every day, like 2 doses of doxy a day. That's a hardcore, like, major antibiotic. And they were giving it to us for malaria. And
isn't that like a skin antibiotic? Is that the same one?
Doxy is used for a whole host of different things. Yeah. Doxy is like a Z-Pack. Like, Doxy will kill anything. And you're just taking it twice a day for months and months and months. So your gut biome is getting destroyed.
Sheesh.
Like, your body is just getting destroyed. And so you don't get malaria. And if you know anything about malaria, you know that if you're from the West and you don't have nutrient deficiencies, if you get malaria, it's like having a mild flu.
Yeah.
I would rather have malaria than take another doxy in my entire life.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Wow. I want to ask you about, how did the military, what role did being in the military play in shaping your life and, sort of where you've come to today?
That's a great question. I've actually never been asked that question before. I have a very good answer, though. The military for me was, how do I put this? The military was the daddy that I never had. I grew up without a father, and a little bit of backstory to this. My brothers did have their father. I didn't have mine. And something that really, really hurt me over the years to remember was being at our house, and their dad would come over to pick them up for the weekend, and they would leave. And just have this memory of them in the back of the car, like like all happy and stuff. And I'm sitting there in the yard by myself, wondering why I'm not allowed to go. And I preface the military story with that because when I got into the military, I was not used to being around like men at all. It was just me and my mom. And I wasn't used to being around men. My only experience before that was sports. And that's why I dove so deep into sports when I was in high school. Had a very, very good wrestling coach that essentially saved my life by helping me get into sports because I didn't have the leadership of a father to tell me anything. And I didn't realize until later on, probably about 6 years into the military, that's what the military really, really helped like shape me. Because I got to see good leaders, I got to see bad leaders, I got to see, toxic leaders, I got to see a whole host of different types of men. And I think that the main thing that I got out of it was it's good to be around men. It's good to be around your boys. It's good to be around strong leaders. Like it's good for you. And I never had that when I was a kid. And when I talk to people who had fathers, had both parents, fathers, even if it was just their dad, they don't understand. Like, I learned that when I was a kid. I said, I didn't learn that till I was 27, and it's the little things. It's the, hey, don't do that. It's the stuff that only your dad can teach you. And I had to learn it way later. And I learned most of that stuff in the military. So probably in some pretty toxic ways, but
yeah, man, I really want to unpack that. What do you think your mother, can I ask what happened to your father?
Yeah. My father was, I believe he was 19 when I was born. My mother was in her 30s. And my father had already had I don't know if they were married yet or if they were almost married. He already had another woman and they were moving like out of California. That's where I grew up. And however him and my mom got together, it was basically just for a short period of time. Maybe a night. I'm not really sure. My mom won't really tell me the story, obviously. Yeah. I don't care to ask her either. My mom's, I give her all the benefit of the doubt. I don't care. My mom raised 3 boys by herself. I don't care. It's not a mistake to me. I don't see it as a mistake, But so my father already had another family, so he wasn't around.
So you've never met him? Never.
I met him once.
You did?
I met him once when I was 17. Yeah, I was 17. I met him, and I met my younger brother, who is now passed away from him and his wife. And he gave me a bunch of promises about me coming out to see them and whatnot, and I never heard from him again. So
there are, I don't know what the statistics are, but if we end up clipping this, there are a lot of single mothers out there right now, right? Just trying to do their best.
I think the statistic is 70% or almost 70% of new mothers are single mothers. Something like that.
It's a big number.
Insane.
It's a big number. And I think about the household structure that I grew up in, and I had a great mother and a great father, and I feel really fortunate to have won the lottery to be born into the family that I was and the country that I was born in, right? Think about my kid's situation as well. And I can't imagine a world where one of us doesn't exist, me or my wife. Specifically, my wife, when I almost lost her, I went to that place. I was thinking I was going to be a single father. And that's a lot scarier than a single mother for sure. What do you think your mother did to try to fill the gap of not having a man in the home?
I think my mother did everything that she possibly could to make sure that we didn't go wanting anything. We had everything we needed. We had food, we had a house, we had, she worked really hard. She was on welfare for a long time. Got 2 different jobs, worked our way out of welfare. She never had any help. It was just her. So my brothers and I kind of had to raise ourselves for a lot of it. But I think that's actually a good thing. And I was fortunate to grow up with brothers. I think having brothers is kind of a superpower. Because if you growing up with your brothers, if you continue that relationship, and are close with them for your whole life. I know a lot of people who they're estranged from their brothers and sisters. I'm like, how?
Yeah.
Like, how? That's your brother. Like, I get when it's they or their family member is a complete like piece of shit or something, but it's like, dude, that's your brother. Like, you grew up with them. You raised each other. Like, how? My brothers and I are very close still. So I feel like it's kind of a superpower, but I think my mother did everything she possibly could to make sure that we didn't, want anything. There was nothing that we needed that we didn't have.
Yeah. So. Yeah. The brotherhood one, man. I think that's the term brotherhood is thrown around a lot, right? We've even thrown it around in our men's coaching group levels. You've heard this term. It's almost a sacred term, though, that shouldn't be used lightly. I think it should only be used when it's blood, because, man, I am really close to 2 of my brothers, and I am not as close to one of my brothers. We still love each other a lot. Mm-hmm. Just circumstantially over time, there's been some distance created between us, and so we don't talk as much. But man, 2 of my brothers I talk to several times a week still. One of them lives in Brazil, right? Lives a long ways away from where I live. And there has never been other men in my life, even my father or my closest friends, that could fill that void that a brother does. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that God gave each of us special abilities and intuition for each other. I'll give you an example. I was one of the hardest moments of my professional life was when I was in the process of selling my business. I was planning a future based on this business being sold and making a lot of money. And at some point in the process, the deal fell apart. And I remember feeling like my world was, crumbling down before me. Boo-hoo, right? I remember calling my brother and, I'm complaining. Here's what's going on, dude. I'm so sad. I can't believe this is happening. And he just listened, and he just leaned into me and loved me and said, hey, it's going to work out. And here's some advice. It's always been timely, great advice. This guy pours into me. And I get a text from my mom. About an hour later. And she says, hey, did you hear Derek's in the hospital? He's like fighting for his life. This was during COVID. He had pneumonia and COVID at the same time. And that ended up being one of the lethal things for a lot of people. I said, when did he get there? It's like, he's been there for like 24 hours. He didn't even mention it, He's literally on his deathbed, and he's like pouring into me because I have some business problem. And dude, that was that meant a lot to me, obviously, right? So I think brothers have this different, unique gift that we're given at birth to be able to support each other at a level that just other men can't.
I think I was the last person my brother talked to before he passed, my younger brother, at the beginning of last year. And we didn't even know each other that well. You know, I only met him once in person. I talked to him a handful of times over the years. But that affected me more than some of my closest friends passing because of what you're talking about. Because of that, it's just and even though he wasn't from, you know, the same mother, it's like that came from our father, you know. And watching him deteriorate and pass was probably one of the hardest things.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. What advice do you have for the literally millions of single moms out there that are just doing their best to try to raise good kids in this world?
Yeah, two things. One of them might be a bit controversial and they might not want to hear this, but don't try to be their father. You see it all the time on social media. You see, you know, happy Father's Day to me, I'm a single mom, you know, and it's like, you can't be their father too. You have to be their mother. Like you can't try to be their father. You can't try to instill those things into them because you're their mother. It doesn't work. And that's not taking away from the mom at all. But you're the mother. You're supposed to instill them with the feminine that they need, especially the young men. Yes, we need that. We need the nurturing. We need we need that stuff. We need to be able to feel that stuff. But we also need the father. We need a strong male figure.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of women nowadays, they push away strong male figures because they think they could do it on their own. You know, there's this entitlement that I can just do it on my own. I'm a single mom. I'm powerful. Yes, you are, sure, right? But all of the science and millennia of proof that especially, I mean, girls too, but boys need their father or a strong male role model that can take that and teach them and guide them and, you know, be that masculine energy for them because it can't be their mother.
Yeah.
So I think the other advice would be for the ladies, if you do find that guy that you think would be a good role model for your kids, don't push them away because you think you're powerful. I think it happens a lot more than people I think would let on. Where it's like they don't want to feel like they can't do it on their own, so they end up pushing something good away. So,
yeah, the father figure's incredibly important. You had a moment in your life, and maybe we'll piece together how you got here, but there were a few months in your life where you were homeless. Mm-hmm. And it's almost unbelievable for me to sit here and look at you and believe that actually happened. How do you reconcile that time of your life?
It's tough. Some of the people I'm closest with might be finding out from this podcast that was a reality for me. Not a lot of people know that I went through that. I share it more so now, but I don't share the exact timeline. And that's for some reasons, because I was putting on a facade at that time of like, no, I'm doing this. I don't need that job that I just lost. I can figure it out. I can build a business. I can, just bad decisions and some bad luck, and ended up, living in my truck for a few months. So I was never on the street, I guess. I still had my truck, but it was tough. It was because I never thought that I would get to that point, especially after, the being military, having everything I needed, and being as qualified as I was in the military, and then getting out and going to the oil field and having all that success. And then, after the military, I went and I taught nutrition and physiology. Like I taught in a college, after I went to school, after all this. And then I was working I was working a construction job before that. That was, it was a great job. And I didn't really know how I got there. I was like, how am I really not capable? Like, can I really not figure this out? I would get it if I was in my early 20s, but not in my 30s. Not in my early 30s would I ever have imagined that I would have nowhere to go and feel like I couldn't reach out to anybody for help. And it was because I have always been the person that gives advice, and I always felt like I had to have all my shit together. I think a lot of men feel like that, actually. I think we all feel like we have to have our shit together for everybody else. The only reason I ended up having a place to stay was because a very, very good friend of mine, one of my best friends, I would consider her family. She provided me with a place to stay while she was deployed. And she didn't know that I didn't have anywhere to go. It was just a conversation we were having about, somebody watching her dog while she was gone. And I offered, I was like, I can watch him. Like, do you have anybody watching your house? She's like, no, that'd be great. Are you in Vegas? I said, I can be.
I am now.
Yeah, I'm on the way.
Literally, I'm
starting the truck up. Yeah, driving there now with everything I own. And she didn't know that at first. And when I told her that, she was pretty upset. She's like, "Why didn't you tell me before?" Like, I hear that a lot from people. Like, why didn't you tell us before?
Yeah,
like, couldn't admit that. I couldn't admit that my whole life had fallen apart from the highest of highs, and now all of a sudden in my 30s, I thought when I was 30 I'd have family and a house and and it's like, oh, here I am starting over once again. So,
was that rock bottom for you?
Yeah,
the lowest.
Yeah. I wasn't. It was different. It was different than the time I'd felt before. When I was suicidal, it was different. I wasn't suicidal, but I was broken. Like, I couldn't even. I was broken. I have videos actually from then when I was trying to build my first business, talking about health, and I look at myself in those videos and I'm like, God, who would have listened to this fucking guy? Like, I just looked
so unhealthy.
I looked broken and just,
yeah,
looked gaunt, but I tried. I was trying so fucking hard. I had a air mattress in my friend's house and a little desk, and I would get up off the air mattress in the morning and sit at the little desk and write and build content for my first business. It was called TBO 90. It was Total Body Optimization 90. I ran 90-day challenges for people to optimize different areas of their life.
Yeah.
And it was successful enough that it could pay my bills and, give me a little bit of money in my pocket to, find more work and stuff. But I would say that was definitely the lowest, for sure.
I want to circle back on this thought that you had, which was that you couldn't reach out. I think that we as men, there are a lot of reasons why we feel that way, why we feel like we cannot tell people, right? And the list is probably too long to even get into. But I think that there's probably a moment in every man's life where that switch flips and they finally, I hope that every man goes through this to where they finally go, it's okay to talk. It's okay to be seen. It's okay to be vulnerable. And it doesn't mean you have to do it with the world, but you should feel comfortable enough with at least a few men specifically that you can open up and talk to, right? You feel like you have that now in your life?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm blessed to be surrounded by some of the best men that I've ever experienced in my life, you included. It's actually insane to me to realize how many like really good dudes are out there that have the same mindset, that have the same like drive to build big stuff, but also like, you know, have a reaching hand when you need it. So without judgment. And I don't know if it's the judgment that men are really worried about. I think I don't think it's an external thing. I don't think it's, you know, if you reached out and I laughed at you, I don't think that's the part that would really hurt you. I think it's the part where, gosh, I can't figure this out on my own. You know, I'm supposed to be able to figure this out. I'm supposed to be able to get through this. I'm a man. I'm supposed to, right? And we're not supposed to do this alone. We're not supposed to do this without a tribe. We're not supposed to do this, you know, anybody who says they're self-made, I think, is taking liberties, I think, because you had to have help somewhere.
Yeah.
Or you had to step on somebody somewhere, you know. So I think which is kind of funny, I worked for a company called Self-Made before, but.
Yeah, I think it can't, I can't talk about this enough, right? Which is the idea that there are so many men out there that just don't have, they don't have one of two things. They don't actually have a support system, specifically of other men, or they're stuck feeling trapped like you were and like I've been before in this, I can't be seen this way, right? And it's, it's one of the leading causes to men's mental health, the men's mental health epidemic that's going on right now is I just didn't have someone I could pick up the phone and call. And to me, that's unacceptable. Like, do the work to get to that place where when you're going through it, you've got people you can call.
You also have to be that person too.
Yeah.
You have to be the person that somebody could call.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of development. You know, that takes a lot of looking inward to say, would I pick up the phone? Like, would you? Like, that's a hard question. You know, of course I would, until somebody calls you at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
And you see it and you go, nah, I'm asleep. Fuck.
Yeah.
You're asleep and now that person's dead. You know?
Yeah. You hear that scenario way too often, which is, you know, if you go survey 100 men right now and say, how many of you know somebody in the last 1 year that's committed suicide?
Yep.
Another man, by the way, most of them would raise their hand. We did it at the retreat. Like most men, I know 5 in the last 8 months.
Yeah. Too many to count.
Dude, and it's like, you know, you hear the story way too often, which is, man, if I would have just reached out, if I would have just made myself available to him, maybe I could have helped, right? And so it's like try to put yourself in a position where you don't have to feel that way anymore. Mm-hmm. If you have a prompting to reach out, just do it.
Just reach out.
Just reach out.
Even no agenda. Simple, hey, bro, right? How you doing, man? What's going on? Yep. What's up, buddy?
What's up, buddy? The worst thing to call a man ever. Buddy. Buddy the elf. Cue him right here. There's another thing that you said, though, Adam, that I want to unpack with you a little bit, which is I think you have all these incredible minds and talents and people that have just so much energy and skill and pick a word. And like, you're one of those men, but you didn't know how to harness what you had in those moments. I think there's so many men out there like this, and I keep bumping into them. You're one of them, which is like, I'm like, dude, why isn't this guy like a millionaire? Like, why isn't this guy just like crushing the game, right? But I think a lot of it actually has to do with potentially the upbringing, right? Like, I feel grateful that my father like showed and instilled business practices into me at a young age, and financial literacy, and and so I don't know what it is, but I want to ask you, like, there's so many men out there that have it, but they just don't have the know-how to go and do something with what they have to like get ahead, right? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I have two thoughts on that. My brothers and I joke, and we call it the Boulevard Syndrome. And that's because the little town that we grew up in was called Boulevard, and nobody made it out of there. Everybody's a druggie now, or stayed there and has this.
Where is that? California.
California.
Where?
Yeah, it's up in the mountains. So it's still in San Diego County, but it's like way east. So it's on the border of Imperial County and San Diego County.
Okay. Yeah.
It's up in the mountains, and there's not even a Dollar General. You know what I mean? Like, that's pretty bad when you don't have a Dollar General even. We didn't even know what that was. So we had a post office, a deli, and a video store, I think. That was basically it, and a hardware store.
That deli was bomb, though.
The deli was bomb. Yeah. Yeah. And we had a hardware store that my brother's dad actually owned and we worked at. We child labored a hardware store when I was a kid, so that was cool.
Nice.
But I call it the Boulevard Syndrome because growing up there, we didn't even know it was possible. We had no idea. I thought that was it, and it was one of the feelings that I had. One of the reasons why I went in the military was I was just getting this feeling of like, there's got to be more. There's got to be more than just Boulevard, And the other part of that, I think a lot of people have that little. It's like a block. It's like a mental block of like, oh, this is where I came from, so I'm destined for that. Then there's another piece of that where everything that you learn before you're 8 becomes a part of your reality, and because your brain is so malleable before 8 years old, anything that you tell your child before they're 8, they're going to carry on for the rest of their life. They're going to carry that with them. That's why I tell parents, be very careful what you tell your kids before they're 8, before they're 10, really. But 8 is like kind of where the studies are showing that it's like your brain becomes a little bit more plastic. And if you tell your kid that you're never going to amount to anything before they're 8, there's like 99% certainty that they're not going to amount to anything because they have that belief in their head that they won't. It's a reality. It's not even a belief. It's just a reality. There's a block. And it doesn't even have to be a negative comment. It can be a limiting comment. I personally have had that, where I was told by a close family member that that's nice, but we won't have that before I was 8, and I carried that until I was 33. It took me till I was 33 to figure out that was a block for me about why I hadn't finished anything and I hadn't achieved anything really, and I hadn't made it past that the little ceiling, where it's like almost there to success, and then you can't get past it. It's like a mime. You could see it, but you can't get to it because it's not for you, and you'll never get to it until you figure out what that block is. And it wasn't said to me out of pain or hurt, or, it wasn't a negative comment that she made to me even. It was just, that's nice, but too bad we'll never have that. And that molded my entire reality till I was about 33 years old. And it took a lot. to figure that out.
Yeah. You know I'm not letting you off the hook with these cryptic messages you're sending my way. So
Figured you wanted to ask about that one.
listen, I know the reason I'm going to go here right now on the show is because one of the most maybe impactful and profound stories that I've heard in the last year is your story around this deep rooted limiting belief that you had. And pretty much everybody has limiting beliefs inside. I've shared certain ones that were really, really intimate to me on the show, and you know how I've been able to break through. I'd love for you to share that story. I'd love for you to share who that person was. That's okay. You can do that.
Yeah.
I promise. And I'd love for you to share how you found yourself in that hotel that day doing what you were doing and what that did for you and how that changed your life.
Yeah. It's going to get spicy. So on that, right, had this block of, you know, seeing the veil, but not being able to get behind it. And I was experimenting with psychedelics, to try to figure that out. I was about 33 years old. I'm 35 now. I'll be 36, next month. And I was experimenting with psychedelics. I'd done a ton of research on them and stuff. And I was experimenting with mushrooms specifically and, you know, doing 3 to 7 grams. And I was seeing this like almost a shadow of a vision of that's the answer. And I couldn't understand what was limiting me so much that I couldn't get to it. I couldn't achieve it. I couldn't touch it. I couldn't, you know. So this was during the homeless dark days. I had used basically what was left of my money to get a hotel room. And I had 18 grams of mushrooms, and I ate all of them. And I knew I wasn't going to die, but I was ready to, if that makes sense. That's a lot if you guys don't know. Like, if you don't know mushroom amounts, 18 is insane. Like, 7 is insane. 18 is like, I don't even know how to explain it. 18 is absolutely insane. So I turned all the lights off in the hotel room. I locked the door. I ate 18 grams of mushrooms, and I laid on the floor and essentially ready to die. And it wasn't like a suicidal ready to die, but it was I'm ready to figure this out. And if I have to die in order to figure it out, it's going to happen. So I was laying on the floor, and I started to go through the whole trip process, the fuzz and the, started to see the shapes and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden everything went black. And I woke up, and this story is absolutely insane, but it's 100% true. I woke up in my yard, my childhood yard at my mom's house. And I was looking around, and I was like, gosh, like, this looks very familiar. Like, I know this place. But it wasn't my mom's house now. It was my mom's yard when I was a kid. All this stuff, like the fort that we had built in the yard, was still there, like all this stuff. And more specifically, the bathtubs my mom had in the yard that she would plant stuff in. And one of those bathtubs was always empty. I asked her to just leave it empty for me when I was a kid. Because whenever, anything bad was happening, I would run out into the yard and take my blankets and my pillows, and I would go and sleep in the bathtub. That was kind of like my safe place when I was a kid. And I was looking around the yard, and I could see like a little face in the bathtub, kind of looking at me. And I couldn't figure it out. I was so confused on what is going on here? And I started walking up to the bathtub, and I started materializing a memory of being 8 years old and seeing a man in my yard. Excuse me. And some very key features. I remember the hands. I remember him having really, really strong hands, and just kind of like he'd been through a lot. But I wasn't scared. I didn't feel scared. And this is, materializing this memory in my brain. And if you've ever taken mushrooms, you understand what I'm talking about. This memory was materialized in my brain of meeting this man in my yard. And I kind of came to for a second, and I realized that the little kid in the bathtub was me, and I was the one standing in my yard. I was the person that I met in my yard when I was 8. And I had a conversation with myself. And if you don't mind, I have it written down, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I think it's important for the story, I think. I actually wrote this down as soon as I came to out of the trip. I wrote down what I said to myself, and having a conversation with your childhood self. That's what every therapist is trying to do for you, right? You're trying to figure out what that childhood trauma is. You're trying to figure out what that, and it wasn't even trauma. Like that limiting belief, it wasn't trauma in like the definition sense, because just hearing that, hey, we'll never have that, that's not trauma, right? So, but it's misunderstood because it's something that defined me for so long that I had to visit that particular moment and have this conversation. And this is what I said to myself. This was October 3rd, 2021, at 12:12 a.m. This is as soon as I came to out of the trip. I wrote down what I said to myself. I said to the little boy laying in the bathtub in the yard, looking up at the stars, heart full of wonder, mind full of hope, I won't let you down. I will make you proud. You've got this, buddy, no matter how hard life gets, no matter the heartache, the pain, the suffering, or the setbacks, we've got this. Don't ever forget where you came from. This is what it's all about. Live life endlessly. And it was such a powerful moment that I don't think I would have ever experienced that without such an extreme. I don't think any amount of therapy or any amount of, looking inward or whatever, I don't think anything could have gotten me there except for something extreme, and if, just like the rest of my life, I have to learn everything the hard way. I had to learn through 18 grams of mushrooms that, listen, man, we're worth it. Like, you don't have to let that define you. Like, and I was just going over all of the, the heartache, the pain, the suffering, the things that I had experienced up until I was 33. It almost felt like the memories of all that stuff were now almost not real. Like I had gone back and told myself that, and I had lived a different life that got me to where I am now. Because where I am now is not the same trajectory as the one I was on. I didn't think I was going to make it to 35. I was prepared not to make it to 35. And when I look back now, I'm like, gosh, this isn't the life that was lived by that limited boy, So I essentially kind of unpacked it, and I became I unpacked it, and I had become the man that I needed. when I was a boy. And I think that's a really powerful thing, and I think that's something that I would tell, the men out there that grew up without a father. Become him. Become the person that you needed to lead you. Become that. We all know what it is in our hearts. We all know what that is. We all know what we needed. And I think if you focus on becoming what you needed, then you're going to do a lot of good.
Man, thank you. Thanks for sharing that. That's exactly why I wanted you to share the story, man, because it's, I think everybody's going to have different ways to unravel and unpack some of their childhood memories and traumas, and yours was one way, and I hope that'll encourage other people to find a way as well.
Yeah.
So you and I had the opportunity to, the way that we met was I had your business partner, Justin Cross, who's also a man's man, who is coming on the podcast very soon. So he came on one time. We had some technical difficulties, unfortunately, but I think it happened for a reason. He's going to come on again. And, I invited you guys to a men's retreat that we were hosting. And we hosted this retreat up in Sedona. There was 25 men. And, I think it was just these words are thrown around loosely, but it was a transformative, life-changing experience for every man that was there. I know you personally had some huge breakthroughs at this event. And another modality to work through stuff I introduced to the group, which is holotropic breathwork.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love for you to share. I know I'm asking you to go back to back here, okay?
Yeah.
It's a lot. But I'd love for you to share
I knew you were going to.
the experience that you had with Jen and with the men that night doing that breathwork journey.
Yeah. So, like I said, I'm pretty versed in psychedelics. I understand understanding that that's what holotropic breathwork is supposed to induce also at a certain degree. So I went in knowing that I was going to get benefit from it. But I had no idea what the extent of it was going to be. And it wasn't what I intended either, which is probably the coolest part about it. Was my intention going in was, hey, give me some answers on my confidence, right? I feel like I lack confidence in certain areas. I was like, I want to unpack that, right? And when I went in, it was a struggle. It was an hour long of this very intense breath work, and Jen was amazing. She knew exactly how to bring us into different, places.
Shout out Jen, man.
Yeah, shout out.
Best.
She's the best. And she even told us before we started, she goes, you're going to get to a certain point where you're going to fight it. And I was like, I'm not going to fight this. I know what I want. Like, I want to know why the confidence issues and I already know I'm ready, and lo and behold, I was struggling. I was like, because my mind was, and if you've never done holotropic breath work, you hallucinate. Like, there are hallucinations, there are visions, all the things. I kept ending up back in the yard where I was, 8-year-old in the bathtub. I kept ending up back there, and I was like, I've already been here. Why am I going here? I've already been here. I don't need to see this again. I've already been here. I'm done, And I think she could tell. She's absolutely insane. She knows exactly what the hell she's doing, because she could feel that just in my breath. And she walked right up to me and she put her hand on my heart and she said, "Go there." I was like, okay, we're going to go there. So I went back there, I think it was during the second breath hold. I went back there, and there was a very simple thing that I didn't finish the last time I was there. And it was so simple, and I can't even believe that I didn't think of it before. And I hugged my 8-year-old self, and I said I was sorry. And I want to say that I forgave him, but I didn't. He forgave me. And I didn't understand at the time how crazy that little, moment was of forgiveness, because I thought I was done with that. I thought, oh, we figured it out. We had some limiting beliefs. You went back and you said, hey, buddy, it's going to be okay. Like, we got this. I gave them all the rah, and that was the problem. I gave all the rah, and I didn't give them a fucking hug, And right at the last portion of the breath hold, right before I gave him a hug, Jen wrapped my arms around me, and I lost it, man. I completely lost it, because you think about growing up, and I can't remember ever. My mom hugged us, and don't get this the wrong way, but I can't remember ever being hugged like that.
Yeah.
And I think it's a hug that only a father can give, or only that, like, the masculine, like, it's not a hug of nourishment, or it's not a hug of, of like a feminine, like, soft hug. It's a hug of, like, it's like powerful. It's like you just feel the power there. Like, I've got you. Like, I've got you. I'll kill for you. I'll die for you. All the things that you should be saying to yourself, yes, but all the stuff that you didn't get from your father. And I came out of that, and it was the missing piece that I needed for this complete mindset shift. And it was the reason why I hadn't finished anything. Even after the 18-gram mushroom trip, I still was having trouble finishing stuff. And that was something that I couldn't figure out. It was like, I start things and I build them up, and I just can't finish it. And it's because I had unfinished business. I had to go back and finish that. And it proved to me that I could finish it.
Yeah.
It's like, like,
I am a finisher.
I am a finisher.
It's profound. Man. What did that retreat in Sedona do for you?
I think, especially since over the last year, myself and Justin, we've been a part of a multitude of, men's groups, and, the men's development and the masterminds, and the rah stuff. And, it showed me that there is something way more to getting people together and driving a mindset into them. And it has nothing to do with, like, some of the stuff that we learned there from some of the speakers and things. Like, they were very tactical, and they were stuff that you could use for your business. And we talked about that a little bit. But one of the things that you said in the beginning that really, really set that retreat apart from anything, he goes, when you said, this is the last time we're going to talk about what we do. And I think everybody kind of was taken off guard a little bit. But you were very firm about it. You're like, okay, go around the table. What do you do for work? Like, cool, that's the last time you're ever going to talk about that. So it kind of forced us just to kind of be dudes and talk about other stuff. And I think that itself was a complete differentiator from anything else I've ever experienced. Because you have people in the room that, sure, you could go to a networking event and meet somebody like Luke. But I would never be able to have a conversation.
Not, by the way.
Probably not Luke, but you get what I'm saying.
But a successful business.
Probably not Luke, but like, there's no possible way I could ever have gotten to a room with him otherwise.
Yeah.
And we had a conversation in the van on the way to dinner that was insane. And it had nothing to do with work or business, but it was probably one of the most beneficial conversations I've ever had in my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that that retreat. And look, I'm not saying this because I'm like the founder of the thing either. Like, you can attest to this. Like, I was as much impacted and a part of everything that we did as every other man there. And, you know, I always say, like, I think I got more value than anybody who was there. And I think probably everyone would challenge me on that, but it was just, man, it was a really moving experience to see the dynamic between Thursday night on the rooftop at the Optima, which you've got, I think there was maybe 15 or so men there, pretty much who didn't know each other. Almost none of them knew each other. And the dynamic on the first day of, like, it actually got kind of awkward. And I sort of had a mini panic attack watching, like, all these men, a lot of alphas, some not, different sort of phases of life, like, really not connecting. I was like,
oh boy,
what did I do? Like, what have I got myself into? And man, to watch the dynamic, I mean, even just from that first night, right? The inner critic and I am statement, and really establishing who we are and not what, you know, decoupling what we do from who we are and our identities. Doing the identity work on the first night, it was great, you know, but it wasn't until there was a moment where one of the men in our group opened up about being suicidal, and another man in our group poured into him, mm-hmm. right? And that was a pivotal moment that sort of went, okay, like, he set the tone for, we can all be seen. Mm-hmm. And when we are seen, here's how we need to react, right? That was a great moment. You couldn't have scripted it better. And then by the second night, the breathwork journey on night 2, and hard to explain just the like, the amount of love and just magnetism and energy that was in the room coming out of that breathwork journey. 25 men in a living room on mats with 2 feet in between each other. Coming out of that was just an experience that, you know, I'll never forget. And the amount of love that was shared at that moment between each other. It's a really bonding, connecting experience. And then night 3, step in the circle, the eye gazing, and then 3 hours of just sharing. We sat in a circle for 3 hours, and we just shared. You know, and you went from the difference in time between that Thursday night and that Saturday night was 48 hours. Mm. So it was like in 2 days, you went from this picture of, like, no one's connecting, it's a little awkward, what do I do with my hands? Mm-hmm. To, like, everyone's embracing, hugging, loving on each other, pouring into each other, being vulnerable. And it was just magic. It really was. So it was really special, and I'm excited that we're going to be doing a lot more of this stuff.
I think men forget that we have a lot more in common with each other than than we would like to put on. I think it was the guy who shot bin Laden, actually, who said that he had to shoot a guy before in front of his wife.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna butcher the story, but essentially he said that, man, in another time, I could have probably been having coffee with that guy in Italy or whatever, having a coffee, laughing about our kids or something. And it's like, I think we as men, we have a lot more in common than we would like to put on. So you brought up the man who brought up, having trouble with suicide, and then the other one pouring into him. And I think it made it so much more powerful when you found out who those men were, because the man who was having the problem and the man who poured into him would have never been in the same room.
No.
Would have never spoken to each other.
Yeah.
Would have never even knew each other existed. And the facilitation of the room alone, like, just that, we could have left the retreat that right then and mission accomplished.
Yeah. Thank you to our sponsors over at Bucked Up. I love this company. I love their products, their apparel, and their supplements. Recently, they dropped the mother of all pre-workouts, Mother Bucker. This is not for the faint of heart. This will make you want to claw your face off. So don't get stuck in traffic when you're headed to the gym. I love these guys. I love this company, and I love their products. They are clearly the best tasting pre-workout on the entire market, and they're number one for a reason. Bucked Up is my favorite workout brand, hands down. And they also have my favorite apparel for working out and just for daily life. It's Lululemon-like quality, but for a fraction of the price that's affordable. So head over to their site, buckedup.com, where you can check it out. And for 20% off their entire site, use the code TylerHall20. I want to spend a beat as we wrap here talking about Earn It All. Mm-hmm. The first time that I met Justin and I saw this hat that you're wearing and I saw the tagline on the side of Earn It All, I didn't really know anything about Justin when I sat down with him first. Those three words seem to be a pretty incredible life mantra for like anybody in like any discipline, not just fitness. What does Earn It All mean to you personally? And why do you think Earn It All is the mechanism by which millions of people's lives can be changed for the better, whether it's through physical health or mental health or other?
To me, and this is going to sound maybe a little convoluted, but to me, when I think of Earn It All, I think of my hands. And it's because my hands are scarred and imperfect, and they've been through. There's miles on them. Yeah. But I've earned the life that I've built for myself through that. That's the first thing that comes to my mind when I think of it. And to extrapolate that a little bit more, I think there's a certain sense of entitlement nowadays, and wherever that came from doesn't matter. The root of that doesn't really matter. It's the fact that we have it. But there is a solution for it, and the solution is understanding that no matter what you're going for, no matter what you want, no matter what you strive for, no matter what kind of life you want, no matter what kind of marriage you want, no matter what kind of body you want, all those things have to be earned through hard work, but not only hard work, but intelligent work, through struggle, but also through, finding the right people to go around you. And then so it's a whole multifaceted thing where nothing is given to you. Like there's no relationship that I've built or networking, or there's nothing that I haven't earned somehow. And I think when you step back and look at your life and you say, what are the best things in my life? The absolute best things. Maybe it's monetary. Maybe it's the car in the driveway. You still earned that. Yeah. It wasn't given to you. And if it was given to you, that's not the thing that you feel like that about. Yeah. It's something else. Maybe it's your marriage. Maybe you grew up rich. Maybe there's something else in your life that you feel, I'm so proud of that thing, but I'm most proud of that thing because it wasn't given to me. Because I had to claw my way up from nothing to have that. For instance, I just purchased a new vehicle. I'm more proud of the fact that I became the person I became and I earned the person that I am than the vehicle. Yeah. For me personally, but it's the entitlement that is really, pulling people down, and I think that getting out of the mindset of entitlement and understanding that you have to earn, and it's not just money, you have to earn respect. You have to earn the relationship that you're in. You have to earn the body that you're in. Like, those are things that you have to earn. They're not given to you. It's not served on a platter. It's when you earn it, it means a whole lot more. Mm-hmm.
Well said. Adam, Niall, thanks for joining the Roller Coaster Podcast today, my man. It was a pleasure.
Pleasure's mine. It's an honor.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
It's a wrap.